Hello, you're listening to Coffee and Culture. We're on Talk 1260 and 103.7 KTRC, streaming at santafe.com. Also, podcast up. You can look at chasedaniel.com or look for Coffee and Culture with Matthew Chase Daniel on Spotify, Amazon, all those kind of podcast platforms. My name is Matthew Chase Daniel. I'm your host every other week. And we usually are talking about things happening in Santa Fe, but this week I happen to be in Los Angeles, and so I'm taking that opportunity to talk to an artist who lives here and has lived here for a long time, named Jeff Weiss. And I recently met him through our mutual friend David Horvitz, who had a show at my gallery Axel Contemporary and at Site Santa Fe as part of their big international that's closing in a couple of weeks. And anyway, I met Jeff and his friend Olivia and David for lunch after their weekly farmers market gathering. And I just found him interesting. David said, I have an old friend who I'm having lunch with. You're welcome to join us. And I didn't know if he meant that his friend was old or that he had been friends for a long time. And I think maybe both. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. How long have you known David?
Right. Yeah. How long?
Yeah, and how did you meet him?
Oh, it's a long story how I met him, but essentially we had a common friend and they had openings, and I would go to the openings every 2 years or something, and David would be there, and slowly but surely we would recognize each other over, I saw you 2 years ago. One day we walked back to the subway together in New York, and we've been friends ever since.
Uh-huh. You were living in New York then?
I was living in New York then.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're from New York, right?
And I'm from New York, yes.
Yeah.
I sound like it too, I think.
Yeah. I lived in New York in the 60s for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
From the time I was 6 months old till I was 5 years old.
Uh-huh. 6 months old, you must have great memories.
Well, most of my memories of New York are, I think I'm in a stroller and with my head back, and I see these lines of buildings coming and going
Fabulous.
as they move through, and the sky as this little slot of blue or
Best New York
white
experience I've heard of.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
You were glad to get out of there?
I was very happy to get out of there, yeah. I've been there almost my entire life, all over New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mother grew up in New York and in the suburbs in Larchmont, and her father grew up in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And her father's mother came from Russia in 1910 or so.
Sounds like my family.
Yeah.
Also from Russia, also in the Bronx.
Yeah. I think from Belarus, maybe Minsk and Pinsk.
Oh, Minsk and Pinsk.
Where the family's from. I've never been back there. Have you ever been over there?
No.
No, neither have I. Anyway, so Jeff does a bunch of different kinds of art, and I don't know if you would describe it in a certain way as conceptual art or just art, or do you have a...
I would
do you
just
have some
describe
sort of
it as
stick?
art.
Yeah.
Conceptual art, I think all art is conceptual art.
Yeah.
You know, if you're painting seagulls on rocks, you do have an idea.
Right. And a lot of the work I've seen, so you have a very extensive website, which is weisslink.com, right?
Correct.
WEISSLINK.com. So people are welcome to go there and check it out. And it's organized sort of in different ways. There's chronology. There's just this huge long list of different projects. So I was looking through it a few days ago and this morning, and I just clicked on words on the list that somehow drew me in. One was beaver shot, which has somewhat sexual references, although not once you watch the piece. And the other was Mice on Crack. So those are two like compelling titles that piqued my interest.
Yeah.
And then there's 100 other things that I didn't click on yet.
Sure.
But that Beaver Shot, is that take place at your place in Vermont?
Yes, I did I made I guess, I think it takes 7.5 hours to watch the whole thing. I made a compilation of what I did in Vermont. And what I did in Vermont is I turned this 70, 80 acre place into an artwork, which I consciously did for about half the time I was there, or a little more than half the time. But at the 50th anniversary of this place, I put it all together, and I would put one episode up, say Beaver Shot, every week in old news, and link to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of my way of showing my work, is I show my own work.
Right.
And so Beaver Shot and the and Mice on Crack, that's all stuff that happened there.
Right.
And that I made while I was there, and that went in old news.
Right.
Yeah.
And Old News is another ongoing project. And how long have you been making Old News?
Well, it'll be 25 years in October, and I have never missed a day. So I do it 7 days a week, and every day of the year, and and it's a lot to talk about, but we can talk about it if you'd like.
Yeah,
to,
we'll get to that in a little bit.
That now.
I'll just Old News is a newsletter compilation editing of things you're reading, strung together, and sent out by email to a list of people who have contacted you to be on the list, and it's news, information, commentary from the art world, maybe a little from the political world, from the scientific, natural world, and then little sort of sub-projects like someone who paints a sign in Mount Washington, maybe, and puts it on their fence and takes a picture every day. We can talk about that more. But it's sort of a fascinating thing that I've been reading for maybe a month. So I'd love to talk about that more. But so the Beaver Shot is video of wetlands in Vermont in the summertime, with sort of the water rippling in the foreground and not a lot else going on. And then it's you telling a story of living with the beavers. And what I found about that and my Mouse on Crack that sort of tied a lot, and maybe Old News relates to this too, is a lot of your work is like observing and editing. And you're observing, because at first you're like, it's about you, the beavers building dams and flooding the road, and you wanting to use the road and the beavers wanting the road to be wet. And rather than just seeing it from your point of view, you're really trying to understand the beaver's point of view.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. What gets left out there, which you might not even know, is I early on thought I was a photographer, and that's a bit of a story. It's how I got into art in the first place. But and back in the day, photography was kind of separate from art. But in my analysis, and actually in photography, photography is a subtractive art. Unlike, say, painting, where you start with nothing and you just keep adding stuff, with photography you start with everything and you draw boxes around it, what's in and what's out. So I'm still kind of a photographer. Old News is photography. I look at what's out there every day in a specific way. I look at it, I try and organize it. And then I draw a box around it, and I say, "Oh, look at this! Look at this! Look at this! Don't look at that!" You know,
right.
I cut it up and stick it in there, so it's still kind of photography.
Yeah,
yeah. And to me, it's an artwork.
Yeah,
not that it matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it is. We're going to go to a break. We'll be right back. My name's Matthew Chase Daniel. I'm talking with artist Jeff Weiss about old news and Beaver Shot and other things. We'll be right back. You're back listening to Coffee and Culture on Talk 1260 and 103.7 KTRC, streaming at santafe.com. I'm drinking a delicious cup of coffee that Jeff Weiss made for me. We're sitting in his living room in Santa Monica in Los Angeles area, California. And we're talking about his artwork. And you have a weekly visit to the farmer's market?
Yes. I've been doing that since I got here. I consider it kind of, it's just a remarkable place. And coming from the East, you do not have anything like that. And so I go every day. And then once David moved back out here, we used to go together. He wound up getting married because of that, but we won't go into that story.
Did he meet Zana at the farmer's market?
No, they actually got married here at the beach in this house with something like 50 people in this room. Totally by accident. It's a good story, but if you want to hear it, I'll just shorten it very much. They got stuck here because it was snowing in New York. They came out to visit. David's dad was dying. They came out to visit. David, in his usual way, shows up and says, "We're going to the farmer's market." And I said, I've been back for 2 hours. You can go to the farmer's market if you want to. Okay, well, let's go to the beach. So we walked down the beach, which is 3 blocks from here. Then we walked back up. And that night I go to a movie and my phone is going off through the entire movie. And when I get home, I remember, oh yeah, all those calls while I was in the movie. And I look at it and it's like, it's David. I'm getting married tomorrow in your house. What do we have to do?
Sounds like David.
Yeah. And I say, what? And he says, yeah, we went to the beach. We're going to do it there. And we can't go anywhere. We're snowed in, so we figured we'd do that.
And he didn't ask you if he could have the wedding at your house. He told you.
Well, he basically told me yes, and then I had to go look to see what the beach was like in the middle of the night. Can we get in there?
Right.
Where's everybody going to park? Blah, 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 blah. And that was it.
Nice.
And it happened, and it was a great wedding, too.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I worked with David on this show at my gallery at Axel, and he has a lot of wonderful ideas, and he has so many ideas that my job, it's back to your being a photographer, being a subtractive art form. Yeah. Working with David is also a subtractive art form. Yes. Well, yes, that's great. Let's do that. No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway. So in the beaver thing, the story is that you're looking at the beavers and what do they want and what do they care about, and they don't care. You're clear. They don't. After a while, you realize they don't care about you. Like you bring in more gravel to raise the road higher, so they can have their pond and you can have your road, but they just build the pond higher because they don't want to get out of the water to cross the road. They just want to have water cross the road. And so you end up, it's a wonderful sort of arc of a story where you're trying to understand them, you're trying to sympathize with them, you're trying to share with them, and you realize that they're not interested in sharing, and then you end up shooting the beaver.
Or trying to, yes. And eventually shooting one, yes.
Yeah. When I was a kid, we had a woodchuck who would come into our garden. This is in rural Connecticut. And I was maybe 11 or 12, and my brother was 12 or 13. And every morning, as we were getting ready for school, we'd see the woodchuck come and eat our vegetable garden. So my mother borrowed a .22 rifle from a friend of hers, and none of us had ever shot anything. So as we were getting ready and eating our poached eggs or whatever for breakfast, we would see one of us would run and get the rifle out from under her bed and load it up, and we'd take each day. We'd aim and shoot, and the same sort of thing as you described. The woodchuck would sort of fly up in the air, and then we'd run out there, and it wouldn't be there. We'd have missed it, and it had taken off.
Yeah.
And the next day it would be back. And we went, and one day it never came back, and either we shot it and it bled out somewhere else, or it just got scared off. I don't know.
Yeah.
Different ending to the
Yeah.
story. But so there's sort of a horrible beauty to that story, because it's just sort of indicative of life and how we make our way through things and trying to reason with other people and other species and live in harmony, and things are harmonious and things aren't harmonious, and we're driven to extreme ends, and I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's all true. Sure. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to kill beavers, but they have their way, and they want it their way, and they're very pushy and determined. And the idea that somehow you're going to make peace with them is just out of the question. They're going to do what they want to do.
Right.
You know, and if you want to try and stop them, you can try. It's hard.
Yeah.
You know.
And so you were saying the beaver piece and the mice on crack piece is part of this sort of overall artwork that you built on this property in northern Vermont.
Yes.
Just talk more about that whole as a project.
Well, I called it a garden, which I eventually discovered along the way that I thought it was a garden. And it, like old news and photography, is also turned into a subtractive project. I had a garden that was somewhere around 80 acres, and I lived there and had a shop, but mostly it was to take care and try to survive in this environment with the beavers and various other things. And but my method of gardening, which is not much different than other people's method of gardening, but they don't seem to acknowledge it, or they don't draw the lines that I drew. I just decided I would never add anything. I would only subtract, like photography and old news. And so I only subtracted. And I made this 80-acre garden by basically sitting up in my shack that overlooked a large part of it, and saying, that tree's got to go. And then going and taking the tree out. And so over the course of, 50 years, I made a landscape, a garden, that was pretty interesting, I thought, and very, very picturesque, which, after all, is part of what people want to garden for.
Right.
So, yeah.
So it's sort of like related to landscape architecture or painting, like you're creating
Well, not like painting, because painting you're adding something. I never added anything. On the 50th anniversary, I did add something, which was a sign I made, which is there, which is a quote from Andy Warhol, if I can remember it right. It says, God, I'm not going to get it right now. So, but basically, Andy Warhol is saying that the best thing you can do in life is to not ruin the landscape. And so, owning land and not ruining it is the best art you can possibly make. It's something like that, which is amazing coming from him too.
Right. He wasn't much of a
you wouldn't think,
but type.
Well, he had a place out on Long Island, which is why I think he said it. It's the most beautiful art you can make, and I thought that's perfect.
Yeah. So the garden, the 80-acre garden, was forest, meadows, a creek, a pond,
yes,
a road.
All of that.
Yeah,
all of that, and it still is kind of special because, for the same reason that, say, most farms were special, I basically did what farmers do. If you work on the field, for example, for 50 years, you wind up with it. When you first get to Vermont or someplace like that, you realize, why does my field look so bad and that guy's field looks so good?
Right.
And then you find out, well, if you cut it twice a year and you do all of this stuff, then your field starts to look good, but it takes 50 years.
Right, because the fields, I mean, I think different landscapes left to their own devices go to a certain thing. Like maybe in Vermont, it's a maple forest or a hardwood forest, whereas in Maine, it's a pine forest. There's a certain sort of peak thing, and us as humans, we have different ideas. We want it to be a meadow, so when the saplings, so we have to mow it to keep the forest from overtaking it.
Yes, you will not have a field if you even go 5 years. You know, it's gone.
Yeah,
I've gone 2 years and come back and had 15-foot trees in the middle of my road.
Right.
You know, that kind of thing.
And the trees too take tending. The
yes,
forest part.
Yeah, I have tried, and it's interesting because forestry has sort of come around to the same thing now. I have tried to let the forest just be. I cut wood there for a long time.
We're back talking about forests, and so you're saying you cut wood in the forest, but otherwise you try and let the forest do its own thing.
Yes, I have the entire time.
Yeah.
Which was against what foresters thought back in the day, anyway.
Right.
And they've sort of come around to the same thing now. I mean, forestry is about how to maximize the useful part of the forest. Yeah, lumber. Or firewood or whatever else you're maximizing.
Right.
So you intervene in particular ways. And I just decided after reading all these books on what I'm supposed to do about my forest, hell with that. I just want it to be a forest. Let it do what it wants.
Right.
And that actually, a lot of foresters have come around to that.
Yeah.
Now, once you intervene, you start a whole thing that's not necessarily great for anything.
Going to end up with what you want.
Yeah.
Because you cut one thing down and another thing comes up.
Yeah, plus there's all the things that use the forest. And with the exception of the beavers, I finally established, this is my part of this place, and I decide what goes on here. Right. It was basically the open land in the field. That's your part of the place, and you can do whatever the hell you want there. I get a right to go across your land. You get a right to go across mine, but you don't mess with my land, and I don't mess with yours.
Yeah.
Except for the beavers, who did not like that at all.
Right. They weren't playing.
Well,
they didn't agree
we're
to
in
your
charge
rules.
here. Get out.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
And so you ended up doing the same.
I ended up trying to deal with them. We're still dealing with them. I have a whole operation. There's a bunch of people who have worked on what to do about beavers, and so a lot has been learned, but it's still a near constant thing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of beavers were trapped and killed and taken out of...
They were almost extinct.
Yeah. And now they're more coming back. But, there's a thing in Santa Fe where there's beavers and they're damming up this area and it floods a road that people, Yeah,
well, beavers, everybody likes beavers now all of a sudden, but they haven't tried to live with them that closely.
If you live up on top of a hill, you love the beavers.
Well, they'll save the forest, when you have beaver ponds, it doesn't burn.
Right.
So they're trying to bring them back in a lot of places.
It keeps erosion, all sorts of things.
And it was all efficient. The extinction of the beavers was all about money.
It was about the pelts to make hats.
It was about the pelts.
About getting rid of them because they were damming the rivers.
It was New York. You go to the Astor Place subway station and there's beavers in the tile work there. Astor that's how Astor got his richness.
Oh, was from
beaver, he was the biggest beaver killer on the planet.
Right. And it was mostly hats, right?
It was hats, yes, it was.
Yeah. What happened to that? Do people wear beaver hats?
You can still buy real beaver hats from a place in Calgary, it turns out. It's very expensive. I actually was going to get one. I have some beaver things around here. I kind of, everybody sends me beaver stuff. They all know I'm a beaver guy.
I used to make artwork out of, I'd collect roadkill and skin it and feathers and use different things for. Oh yeah, there's a beaver. And once I was visiting my mother. My wife and I were driving around in Western Massachusetts, and there was a beaver roadkill, and it was stinky. But I put it in a plastic bag and tied it to the outside of the car to the bumper, thinking I would get around to it. But
you never got around to it.
It got too stinky and gross, and I didn't have a place to process it, and so I ended up just dumping it in the parking lot of a TJ Maxx or some big box store in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. But yeah, they're amazing creatures anyway.
Really amazing.
Yeah,
and unbelievably smart.
Yeah,
I mean, much smarter than I am. That's for sure. They can outwit you at every turn.
Yeah,
and they did.
Yeah,
it's humbling.
Yeah, and the mice too were humbling.
Yeah, the mice too are humbling. Yes.
Yeah.
The mice turned out to be addicted to cough drops. It's on my website.
Hall's lemon cough drops.
Yes, and you brought me a bag of lemon cough drops, surprisingly, not too long ago.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
I now keep as a real souvenir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Those are both wonderful stories to listen to if people want to listen on weisslink.com.
Yeah, the way if you want old news, you can write to me at weisslink.com also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
list at weisslink.com.
What's that?
It's actually the email address is list at
weisslink.com. And just email Jeff and say
I want it.
I want to be on the list.
Yeah, and you'll get it until you're so sick of it you don't know what to do next.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been getting it for, like I said, a month or so, and it pops in, you write it at night. So I'm not a late night person, so I see it every morning. And, the morning you get these, I get the headlines from my local newspaper, and now I get Weisslink, and I open it up, and I don't know what, like the one today was all just one thing, right?
Yes.
About AI artwork and Art Basel Miami.
Yeah.
And some of the things I find fascinating, and I read them, the whole thing, and other things I get a quarter of the way through, and I'm like, I don't care about this.
Right.
And I
skip the way you read the newspaper, too.
Yeah. And it's nice, and it's not objective view of a certain thing. It's you're not writing it, right? You're just...
No, I've never written a word. Well, that's not quite true. When I showed the thing about my garden in Vermont, I did write a sentence. But other than that, I have never written a word.
So all the words
all
are...
subtraction.
So you're just cutting and pasting other people's words from articles that you're reading online.
Actually, yes.
And then there's images, too, which aren't in the email, but they're all links.
Yes.
Image, is that right?
Yes, it's all simple text. There's nothing but simple text. Back when I started 25 years ago, it was pretty hard technically to even do it. People don't realize email is not that old,
right?
And it was a difficult thing to do, but so I just decided to do simple text, which most people could deal with.
Right.
So that's what it is, and the links are links to the images referred to in the picture,
right,
or referred to in the article,
right,
or whatever.
Yeah, maybe yesterday there was a whole series of close-ups from paintings of baby Jesus.
Yes,
and there was great. It was like 10 of them, and they were all similar and a little different. And,
yes. And they all were mentioned in the history that comes after that. I should say that Old News is a collective. I also call it ON for Old News. But the collective is that I don't put anything, I don't add anything, I only subtract, but I have some extremely interesting people some of whom know I exist, and some of whom are friends, and some of whom I don't think even know I exist, who who do things online, not for money. No money is involved in old news. That's a rule. I have a lot of rules for old news, but one of them is no money. No money in, no money out.
So you can read their articles without subscribing.
Yes, it has to be for free. If I can break in to, say, large corporation things like newspapers, I break in.
Right.
But I don't pay anyone and no one pays me. And the people that I have regularly, some of whom have been there since almost the beginning, like 20, 25 years, do this thing every day that's kind of wonderful, or almost every day. So they're basically giving it away. Without talking about all of them, I'll just mention David Shringley. If you don't know who David Shringley is, you should know who David Shringley is. But he makes this art and he gives it away. He does a lot of other things too, like selling T-shirts. He's like famous, and but he makes a painting every day. And he gives it away, and so he's in there every day, and it kind of brightens up your day because he's an amazing person.
Right, you don't know what you're going to get.
You don't know what you're going to get, and he's pretty unique, and he just gives it to you for free. No, he also makes a lot of money, but that's not part of it.
Right. We got to go to another break. We'll be right back. I'm talking with Jeff Weiss. You're back listening to Coffee and Culture. My name's Matthew Chase Daniel, talking with Jeff Weiss. So you were saying you have a lot of rules for old news, like no, you don't pay anyone, no one pays you. It seems like a lot of your artwork, so you're talking about the subtractive process, like in photography, where you're framing things that you're observing more than making them from a tabula rasa or whatever, some blank slate that you're using some genius to create something. Yeah. You're looking around and saying, this detail is interesting. Let's look at it. And you're doing that with the garden in Vermont, and you're doing that with old news. And you were doing that with photography when you were doing photography as a art form. Earlier on, and so with old news, why did you start it, and why do you continue it? Like every day for 25 years, never missing a day, is a great dedication, because it doesn't look like it's quick to put together every day, because it's not quick to read every day, so it must be much longer to put together.
It takes a large part of the day, usually. I have little tricks I can do when I don't have a large part of the day. But,
right.
Yeah. But it does take a long time. The story of how it started, I made a video about. I'm working on the 25th anniversary celebration, which will come up. I've been working on it for more than 2 years. Old news is actually a sculpture too, but that's a story we'll leave for later. I'll stick to the question you asked. To shorten the story of how it started because there was a time, I was an art teacher, photography art teacher, and there was a time when colleges and universities decided that there was something called theory and we all had to talk about it. And all of the art students couldn't be artists unless they read this extremely dense stuff that mostly dead white French guys wrote. And I kind of resisted, to say the least.
Yeah. And
because I didn't think, why do I have to do this? I'm supposed to be teaching studio art. Long story short, it got to the point where they were literally going to try and get rid of me. And I finally said, okay, we gotta do some reading here. And the students were just like, we're not doing that. Get that bullshit out of here.
Right.
You can't do that. And I couldn't figure out
what your approach
I could,
to the school's approach.
Yeah. So I couldn't figure out what to do. And then I realized we were at the beginning of the internet, and all of a sudden you could get all of this stuff on the internet, and we had email all of a sudden. So I kind of put the two together. I thought, oh, I can just take this stuff. And it started with this article that was like talking about how this stuff with theory was garbage, and I thought my students would love this.
Right.
So I sent that, and then I just started sending it every day, and they couldn't pick on me anymore.
Right.
And
So
it
you
turned into
fulfilled that
this.
part of the bargain. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is art, like Renaissance art, and art from the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s that you're looking at, and then other of it is very contemporary things like what's going on with AI art in today's email. And I, as an artist, I pay attention to some things, some of that, but not as deeply in the older work. And I just find it interesting to see what you're picking up on and why you're interested in this or that.
Okay, well, I have a lot of rules, as I said.
Yeah.
And one of my rules, for example, is I don't do advertising, and I don't do show reviews, and I don't do a lot of stuff that most art publications spend all their time doing. I don't do things about money unless it's actually a bigger issue than money. Most of what's available in the art press is about money. It's about money, or it's about some curator that made some show about some artist, and you only hear nothing about the artist. All you hear about is the glories of the institution and the curator, etc. I cut all of that stuff out immediately. So one of the things that you can find in art publications that are interesting, especially if you cut out the curation and the institution, is art history. And art history is, of course, an evolving thing. So today, for example, I learned about this Finnish woman who's some sort of cultural hero in Finland that I had never heard of. So that to me is something that I can do. I just cut out all the stuff about the curator and the glories of the institution, and
Get into the
get
art.
into the woman and her pictures, etc., etc.
Right.
So I don't discriminate between old art and new art, or
Right.
modernism or whatever.
Right.
I have no rules about that. The thing has a structure. If you notice it has more than one structure. But one of the structures is it begins with art and artists, and it ends with money and crime.
Okay.
Every day. So it goes around this same circle every day, where it begins with art and artists, and it ends with money and crime. And there increasingly there's more money and crime out there than there is art and artists.
So the balance changes.
Well, I try to prioritize the artists and the art.
Right.
And I take almost anything that can be in that category, while I pretty much try and keep the other stuff to a minimum, because there's so much of it. I mean, you can make a pretty good argument that it's all about money these days.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the thing today about, what is his name, Beeple, and...
Beeple, yeah. He's a great artist.
Oh, yeah?
No. What Beeple did, he made $69 million
On an NFT thing.
On 16 years of his observations that Ben Davis, a writer, went through all 16 years, and it's like, frat boy art. It's like nothing. It's really garbage.
Right.
I've been doing it for 25 years. I'm not impressed by his 15 years.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and this guy got $69 million for this.
Yeah. Well, but you're not going to sell yours, so you're never get even.
No money.
Not even 70 million.
No money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
We're not
good.
in the business. We're in the business, but we agree we lose everything,
Uh-huh.
In other words, we're a losing business, not a...
Well,
one
it's
that
an
makes
interesting
money.
thing, because the nature of, like, the rise of social media as a platform.
Yeah, I don't do that either.
Right. But other people do, and people put stuff out there for no money.
Mm-hmm.
And what are they putting it out there for? For recognition or clicks or people liking it,
I need more clicks.
Parasocial
relationships.
I've
never advertised. I've never asked anyone to show up. I've never done any of that. It's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
I hit a high. I had to stop. It's a long story. I'll skip over, but basically I had to stop because they were throwing me off the internet because I had so many people. So then I started a waiting list because the people kept showing up. I've never said to anyone, "Oh, this thing exists here." Well, I did to you a moment ago that it was there, but
Right.
if you don't write me, I don't know about you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think that's
Yeah.
an interesting way to go about it. You're back listening to Coffee and Culture. I'm here with Jeff Weiss. Another project which you did a few years ago, and you're working on a new. So there's the Prometheus project, which is about an old bristlecone pine tree near Ely, Nevada, that was cut down in 1964, and then more recent work on sequoia trees, this grove of sequoia trees. So tell me a little bit about those, one or the other, or both of those.
Okay, well, the Prometheus thing is a convoluted story too, but I basically moved back out here to L.A. After 30 years in the East. I was here 30 years before that, and I came back out here, and I actually moved into this particular place. And the first night that I was here, I thought about, well, what am I going to do here? I kind of was happy to be back. What am I going to do? And then I thought, well, what's the difference? I left 30 years ago. Now, what's the difference? Well, I'm old now. So then I remembered that when I was here previously, I had run into this place somewhere up the road that was a forest of ancient trees. So I decided I need to find that place and find the ancient trees now that I'm ancient.
I see.
So that turned out to be something called, the ancient bristlecone pine forest. And it's a forest north of here that in which grow ancient bristlecone pines, and you can't go there most of the time because they grow extremely high, up to 14,000 feet. That's not true. Up to 11,000 feet, but starting at about 9,000 feet. So in the wintertime, you can't go there at all. And I eventually went there, and then I started trying to find out information about bristlecone pines. And I got a book, and in the book it told the story of Prometheus. And Prometheus was a bristlecone pine, not in the ancient bristlecone pine forest, but in a place not far from Ely, Nevada, as Matt just said. And it was cut down by a graduate student, it turned out. So I thought, well, this is me. Graduate students, I've done tons of graduate students. I know a lot about that. Trees, I'm into trees. I need to go and see where this place is and what this tree was. So I went out there, and I'm skipping through a lot of details and arduous stuff. It turned out the place was now a national park. It had been a national forest back then. Most people don't know the difference, but there's a big difference. It was now a national park, which preserves things. It had been a forest, which is actually for the use of the people. And so it turned out that the national park didn't like me and my friend, and didn't want us to see anything. There was a slab from the tree there. I tried to look at the slab. It was supposed to be in the museum, but the lights were turned off, and there was a whole thing, and they finally basically said, why don't you get out of here?
Right.
So that just made us more interested.
Because it was a shameful history.
They thought so, basically this graduate student had been studying something called the Little Ice Age, which was a while ago. And if you want to know about chronology and what life was like through some long term, one of the best ways to find out is from tree rings. It's called the science of dendrochronology. And so he was up there trying to bore. In dendrochronology, you count tree rings, but you don't want to kill a tree to count the tree rings. So you have something called a tree borer, which is a hollow drill, and you drill a hole into the tree, and then you pull a core out, and you count the tree rings there. And it turns out you can find out amazing stuff from each of the tree rings are annual things. So everything, if there wasn't much water that year, it's a small ring. And if there was a lot of water, you can find out all sorts of stuff about history. In any case, so he goes up there with his tree borer, and this is a while back. He got his tree borer from Sweden, and he, of course, can't core this tree. This tree is, 6 feet
so
across,
dense.
yeah, and incredibly dense.
Right.
So, and it's questionable whether he knew how old it was, but in any case, so he breaks his tree borer. And at that time, in national forests, when you want to do something in a national forest, you go and you get a permit. If you want to lumber, you lumber there. You have to get a permit to cut down the trees. If you're a scientist, you go and you say, I want to bore this bristlecone, and they give you a permit. So he goes back to the Forest Service then, and he says, I busted my tree borer. My whole project is gonzo. And they say, oh, no problem. We'll cut it down. And he says, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, okay, go do it. So they get this cowboy, I think I mentioned, maybe I didn't, but this cowboy who, I did mention it to you, but
yeah.
They get this cowboy who's got a chainsaw, and they bring him up there, and he looks at the tree, and he, who hasn't read a book or whatever, looks at the tree, puts his hand on the tree, and says, I'm not killing this tree. Picks up his saw and leaves.
So the reason the student wanted the tree and the reason the cowboy didn't want to cut the tree is because it's a specimen of age, because it's old and majestic.
Because he could tell this was a special
something
tree.
Special, right.
And nobody else could, for some reason.
The student, I'm assuming, wanted that tree because it was special, because it seemed like one of the older trees, or...
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, or so we think, because this turns into an enormous mess. The cowboy leaves, they get some other people up there the next day. Mind you, it's 10,000 feet. It's not easy to get there. It's very hostile environment. You can have a snowstorm in August.
Right. And did you go up there?
Oh, yeah. We had a whole ceremony there.
And is there the base of the tree still there?
It's a secret where the tree the tree is. So they eventually cut the tree down.
Yeah.
And there's a curse that goes with the tree too, and the curse begins then because people die from having messed with the tree, or at least there's this mythology around it, and some of it is true. Because just getting the slab of the tree down the hill becomes this enormous task. It's huge.
Right.
Long story short, somebody hears about this down the road, and it winds up in Congress and everywhere else, because it's the oldest living thing on the earth that anyone has ever seen, and still to this day, it is the oldest living thing. The latest estimate is about 5,100 years old.
Right. No longer the oldest living thing.
No longer the oldest,
in
but
1964,
still the oldest known living thing.
Right.
Yes. And so it turns into this huge mess.
Right.
Oh, the Forest Service, with a grant from the National Science Foundation, has just killed the oldest known living thing on Earth.
Right.
And so it becomes horrendous. And this guy, for the graduate student, for the Park Service, for everybody, it turns into... And
so we don't have a lot of time left, but your project, Prometheus, which you can read more about and see images on the website, is storytelling of this project. And it's through a radio broadcast and a ceremony up there on the mountain, and recordings and photographs and a series of snow globes.
Yes. All of that is true, and it's basically telling the story.
Yeah.
And talking to a lot of scientists and artists, and not a lot, but 5 or 6, enough to tell the story
Yeah.
for real and why this is spectacular.
Yeah.
It's compared to the Louvre or something, because you can tell from these from the rings enormous amount about what life was like 5,000 years ago.
Right. That's a long time.
Is a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating. I've gone through a lot of it on the website and talked to you about it, and I have my snow globe. And you can see on the website that collectors of the snow globes have sent in photographs of their snow globe in situ in their place where they've found to put it. So we should all check that out. And we got to go, but thank you so much, Jeff, for spending time. I enjoyed talking to you guys.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Enjoyed talking to you, too.
Yeah. So everyone check out Weisslink.com, WEISSLINK.com, and learn more about Jeff's work. Thank you. Bye. All right.
All right, we're done. Sorry it ran on.